Hi, I'm Jamie Matczak, Education Consultant for the Wisconsin Valley Library Service. Welcome to the first recorded webinar of 2021, Top Tips for Online Presentations. And this presentation is being given by me. I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you when it is finished.
Congratulations! You have been asked to give a presentation. This is a great experience. It's going to help you with your public speaking skills. It's going to help you make connections. It's going to be great publicity for your library, and it's going to be something great that you can add to your resume. You have been asked to share knowledge with other people, and people are going to be spending time and maybe some money to listen to you. What a great privilege. And with that privilege comes some responsibility. The ability to give a great presentation is a journey. It's hard and it takes work. And not to mention, 77% of the population has some level of anxiety when it comes to public speaking. So you're all at a different place in this skill set. 2020 was an unprecedented year that had us meeting online and doing online presentations more than ever before. And believe it or not, my checklist for preparing for an online presentation is even longer than preparing for an in-person one, because there are so many variables and things that we need to consider. So what do we need to think about? And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover how do we prepare for an online presentation. What are the 5 key components? And then we will wrap things up. When you see this take action photo, it's going to involve you taking some kind of action and likely involve you pausing this recording and doing something. So let's start with one right now. I want you to think about what 3 things concern you about giving an online presentation. Is there something that makes you nervous? Something that worries you? A question that you have? So go ahead now and pause this video or recording and write down those 3 things. And when you're done, come on back. Let's start now with preparation. What do you need to know before you even start working or even thinking about your presentation? As a presenter, you are in control of several things, and that is why there's a mirror on your screen. What is your role? It is your role to make your audience feel at ease, to make them feel comfortable, meaning that the presentation flows. There aren't technical glitches, that you bring up a video and it works, or you don't have a glaring spelling error on your slide and people are focused on that. You want to help your audience understand the material and provide some insight. You also want to do your very best. It's understandable that sometimes there are technology glitches and things go bad, and that's not on you. That can happen. And when it does, be ready for the unexpected. You also want to have fun. Even though this experience might make you nervous, you should enjoy it. So have fun with it. What isn't your role? It's not your role as an online presenter to moderate or watch the chat. It's also not your role to solve any tech issues or to help your moderator solve tech issues. Your moderator should know how the software works. It's also okay if you don't know everything about the subject area. We're going to talk about that later. So remember, what is your role and what isn't your role? Your role is to create the best online presentation that you can. This is my preparation checklist before any talk or presentation, and it's specific to online presentations. The first thing I want to know is, what is my software, or what platform am I using? Is it Zoom? Is it GoToWebinar? Is it WebEx? Many of these have similarities, but they are different. Are you going to be sharing your screen? Or do the slides have to be preloaded ahead of time? That's something that you need to find out. What is your time limit? Does the conference or the audience want you to leave time for questions? And who is your audience? Is this a more friendly audience? Could the material have some controversy in it? So will it be a potential neutral audience? You need to know who your audience is. When are you going to take questions? Do you want to take questions throughout the presentation and be interrupted? Or do you want to stop midway through? Or do you want to wait until the very end? This one is entirely up to you and your comfort level. It all depends on your preference as a presenter. Some presenters don't like the distraction. They want to just present and want to keep their flow. That is entirely up to you. Are you going to be on webcam? If you are, you need to be mindful of your background and make sure you have enough lighting and what you're wearing. I prefer not to be on webcam because of connectivity issues more than anything else. It's okay to use webcam at the beginning in an introduction, and then I think it's okay to turn the webcam off. You can still give a great presentation without a webcam. Are you going to show live video? Does your platform even support live video? I'm not a big fan of live video in online presentations because, again, it can be complicated and there can be bandwidth issues. Are you allowed to do a test run or sound check? I prefer this. Every webinar presenter who we hire at WVLS is asked to do this, whether they've given 500 online presentations or this is their first one. And most people are happy to do this. Whatever you use in your test run, whatever equipment, wherever you're at, is what you want to use for the actual presentation. Where are you going to be? Are you going to be at the library? In an office with a closed door? Are you going to be at home? If you are at home, what kind of noises might there be? Do you have a pet? Where will the pet be? Can you eliminate the background noise? I have had presentations and have moderated presentations where even though a presenter was on a headset and their dog was in another room, we could hear a dog barking. So keep that in mind. For your technology, what are you going to use? Do you have a phone for your sound? Do you use a mic? Do you have a headset? If you're on a webcam, does your webcam record the sound? That's a great thing to check out in your test run. Please get there early. I always suggest at least 20 minutes. You'd want to show up early for an in-person presentation, right? To check out the room, to check out the equipment. It's no different in an online environment. Are you going to have notes? I highly recommend this. Even if you have a presentation memorized, have your notes handy just in case you get nervous. And finally, it's not a matter of if you will practice, but how many times. I suggest running through your presentation a minimum of 2 times, and you want to time it on both occasions. If you are practicing and you have to stop and correct something, you stop the timer, you fix it, you start back up and continue the timer. I do not suggest winging a presentation ever. If you can, practice with someone or record part of your online presentation so you can listen to part of it. I've asked my coworkers to listen to presentations with me and then give me feedback, and that is very helpful. Practicing is not fun. Nobody likes to do it. I don't like doing it. It is, however, very, very helpful. So please remember to practice. There have been times where I have hired a presenter who was very good in person and then hired this person to do the same program online, and it wasn't the same. Why is that? We have to be aware of the differences between in-person and online presentations. In person, you're talking to actual people. Online, you're talking to a screen. You see faces. You get that energy from the audience. With online, even though you're on a webcam, you're not going to see all their faces. And you have to bring the energy. You have to bring it. You're also not getting any emotions. So if you say something funny, you're likely not going to hear people laughing or see people laughing. You just have to assume they're laughing. So it's not easy showing enthusiasm when talking to a screen. It is a different skill set, so do keep that in mind as well. Prepare to take the time to prepare. The presentation that I'm doing for you right now easily took me over 12 hours to think about, to outline, to design the slide deck, and to practice. So plan for the time to prepare. Do not leave it until the night before. Remember, we don't want to wing it. Let's move on now to some key components, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time for today's presentation. So there are 5 key components to any presentation: delivery, nonverbal communication, your content, your visual content, and accessibility. Let's dive into these. Number 1, delivery. This is the way we give a presentation. It's kind of like a performance in a way. And in my opinion, this is the most important part of an online presentation because people can't see you. You aren't physically in front of them. So how you use your voice and how you deliver the information is huge. Okay, it's time for us to take action again. On the next screen, I would like you to pause that and read the text out loud. What I want you to do is time yourself. Start the timer when you start to read the text, and when you're finished, end the timer. So again, I want you to read the text out loud. Okay, so whenever you're ready, get your timer ready, and I'm going to advance to the next slide. And again, you can pause the screen so that you can read it. Okay? And remember, don't forget to time yourself. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you remembered to pause your screen so you could read it. How long did that take you? Did it take you 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute? Somewhere in between one of those. Okay, the text on your screen is 108 words. And the magic number of words that we want to convey in a presentation every minute is around 100, give or take. So that means if you're giving a 5-minute presentation, you want to aim for around 500-ish words. Look at all the facts in this 108 words. There are a lot of facts here about Lithuania. And that was just about 1 minute that you read that, maybe not even. In moderating over 200 webinars, I have never heard of complaints of a presenter speaking too slow. Never. I have several times heard of presenters going too fast due to nerves. Maybe they have too much content and they need to rush. So speak slower than you think. People need time to catch up. Remember, they can't see you. Right now, you are listening to what I'm saying. You're looking at the slide. You're processing what I'm saying. And maybe you're even taking down some notes. You're doing a lot. So for me as a presenter, I have to slow down. And you also have to remember to pause. Pausing is good. We think it's awkward as a presenter, especially as an online presenter, but it's not. It's okay. Learn to be okay with pausing, because pausing also helps with the filler words. These are the ums, the okays, the uhs. We all have a filler word. What is yours? We use these when we're not comfortable with pausing, and the only way to get better at this is to be aware of it and to practice. I remember listening to a webinar speaker several years ago, and he talked about how to fix this. He said, when you have a filler word or you say a filler word, hit your arm or hit your leg or hit the table or something. I have tried that, and I find it more helpful to record myself for a few minutes and then get a sense of my filler words and then try to work on it. You will find that you will hear presenters that are very good at not using filler words, and let me tell you that they had to work on this. It's not easy. This is a process. When you hear DJs on the radio, they are very good at emphasizing or punching their words. This is also not a bad idea for an online presentation, so consider punching certain words for emphasis. You also want to give all words equal emphasis and volume. I'm going to put a sentence on your screen and read it out loud for you twice. The orange cat ran fast from the red fox. Okay, now I'm going to read it again. The orange cat ran fast from the red fox. Did you notice in the second time how I trailed off? We tend to do this when we get fatigued, or we lose our voice, or we get nervous. Remember that the word fox is just as important as the word cat, so give all of those words equal volume in an online presentation. There are times that you want to speak a little slower. There might be times you want to speed up. There will be times you really want to emphasize certain words. There are times you want to lower your voice. There are times it might be appropriate to speak a little faster and higher pitched. So don't be afraid to vary your pitch. It'll make your online presentation more interesting. Why do we get so nervous? How do I combat that? How do I get better at it? I get asked this a lot. Well, I'm here to tell you that nervousness is good. Yes, you heard me right. It is a good thing. Yay. Because it means that you care. And that's a good thing. So use that nervousness to pump yourself up. Focus on being excited to make the presentation and tell yourself that this anxiousness you're feeling is actually positive energy in anticipation of you sharing your knowledge. I still get nervous when I speak. I'm nervous right now, and I've learned to accept that. What are some tips though? How can we calm our nerves? This is where practicing comes into play. The more we practice, the more confident we're going to feel in our presentation. Again, speaking slowly can help. When we're nervous, we tend to speak fast. So try to speak slowly. Even write it down in your notes if you have to. We want to stay hydrated before the presentation and have it during. So have water handy. Some of us might like caffeine for that jolt. Remember though that caffeine can make our heart race and can make our palms sweat. And if it's coffee or something hot, it might make our body warm when it already might be at a high temperature. So keep that in mind. We want to be on time to the presentation and even early if we can, so that we can work out those nerves. Can we move around right before we speak? So if you're at home or in the library, can you do some stairs? Can you take a 5-minute walk? Kind of get that adrenaline working in your favor. And finally, maybe accept it. Accept that you get nervous and that it's okay. It's something that I've learned to accept. And again, I think it can be an okay thing. All right, let's move on to our number 2 key component, and that is nonverbal communication. So this is our body language. This is definitely more relevant in a in-person presentation. Where do you put your hands? How and where do you stand? If there's a podium, do you stand behind it? How do you move around it? What should your eye contact be? Where do you put your arms? It still does have a place in online presentations, but we're not going to focus too heavily on it. The 3 main components for nonverbal communication in online is our eye contact, our facial expressions, and our gestures. So if you are on webcam, you want to look right at the lens. That is your audience. If you're not on webcam, it doesn't matter where you look. Smiling can help with nervousness. It can also help show enthusiasm. I've done some customer service training where I do a role play where I answer the phone smiling and then I answer the phone not smiling. And I ask the audience, who has their eyes closed, if they can tell in which one I'm smiling and when I'm not. And they always can. So keep that in mind and don't forget to smile. As far as gestures, I think it helps to use them in an online presentation. It can help with the nervousness. But try to remember to keep one hand always near your mouse or whatever you're using to advance your slides. And then use your other hand for movement and emphasis. What I'd like to do right now is take a 20-second pause. This is not a major break. We're just going to take a 20-second pause to let you catch up on your notes. And I'm going to take a drink of water. All right, let's move on. The third key component to any presentation is content. This is your actual material. What are you talking about? What is your subject? I attended a tech conference several years ago, and it was kind of expensive, around $500 to attend. And it was a large conference, a lot of people. I was in a large session room for a program. I would say there were several hundred of us in this room, probably held around 500 people. There was a panel of 3 speakers. The first speaker was very good. She was very organized. You could tell she had prepared. She had a great presentation. The second speaker came up, and the first thing he said was, "Yeah, I'm just going to share a couple things I just wrote down on some Post-it notes right now." And we were like, what? Is he for real? Did he really just say that? Over the next several minutes, many people got up and left. They walked out of the session. So again, this is a conference where if you present, your registration fee is waived. So people were mad. This presenter was known at the rest of the conference as the presenter with the Post-it. It was being tweeted about. It was being talked about. We don't want to be that person. We don't want to be the one that's talked about in a negative way. And that's why it's so important to be prepared. People are spending their money, or possibly their library's money and time, to listen to you. We don't want to be the Post-it person. You have to watch the time. If you need to ask your moderator to give you a 10-minute warning, then do it. If you need to set a timer, then do that. Do what you need to do to keep on track. If you are part of a panel and you have 10 minutes, that doesn't mean you speak for 15 minutes, because that means you didn't prepare. You were tasked with giving 10 minutes of material and you went 15. And now everybody after you has to rush or adjust their presentation to accommodate you for not preparing. So please watch the time and be mindful of that. I think pauses and breaks are good. You will notice that earlier I took a 20-second break. That was really quick. It's not something you have to do. If you are speaking online or in person, and it's at least an hour and a half, I think you need to give at least a 5-minute bathroom break somewhere in there. You want to make sure you have your content organized. Dale Carnegie, who was a great public speaker, used to say, tell the audience what you want to say it, and tell them what you've said. That's your introduction, your body, and conclusion. We talked about this back in grade school when we used to prepare a paper, and it's no different in a presentation. Let's go into each one of these a little bit more. I want you to think about what these following things have in common. Tying your shoe, doctoring up your coffee or tea, and doing a somersault. Any ideas? These 3 things can be done in 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Why is that important? You have 7 seconds to grab the attention and captivate your audience when you start speaking. When you present, people can tune out. If you're at a conference, people can actually walk out of the room and go to another session. If you're in an online conference, it's even easier. All people have to do is click leave meeting and they can leave the conference session. So what are you going to do or say to captivate your audience in that introduction? This is a typical way a lot of presentations get started. And they're not bad, but is this captivating? A lot of times we start by saying our name. We say what our presentation is. We say who we are and maybe who we work for. We talk about our hobbies. We talk about where we live. We say that we're really excited to be here today. And we talk about why we are speaking about this, why we have expertise on this, and why you should listen to us as an audience. Now, I don't really think saying who you are is needed. Why? Because it says who I am on the slide. And likely someone is going to introduce you. If you're presenting for a conference, this information is also in the program booklet. Same thing. You see the title of my presentation. I don't need to repeat it. You know why you're there. It already says on my title screen who I am and where I work for. I don't need to repeat that. For this presentation, you don't need to know my hobbies because I'm talking about online presentations. Now you might be thinking, well, Jamie, if I'm giving a presentation on ukulele programming at the library, I think my audience should know that I like to play the ukulele and I have experience in this. And I would say, yes, you're right. However, do they need to know that in the first 7 seconds of your presentation? You can weave in your hobbies as you get into it. You also don't need to know where I live. It's not relevant. And of course, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be giving any kind of presentation. Let your voice and enthusiasm show your excitement. I'm always puzzled by this, why we talk about our expertise. If we're at a conference, this information is in our bio. And again, if we were introduced, it's mentioned again. Furthermore, you're speaking about something you are an expert in already. So I know very little about car repair. So I can't imagine any organization is going to hire me to talk about car repair because what would I say? Hi, I'm Jamie. I don't know anything about car repair. Let me tell you that you are qualified to speak about your topic. You wouldn't be asked to talk about it if you weren't. You've earned that. So you really don't need to list your qualifications again. I think we do it more for our own benefit, and I've done this too. Believe me, you are qualified. If you are more comfortable going this route in an introduction, my name is, I suggest keeping it very brief. Keep it under 20 seconds. Introduce yourself, mention what you'll be talking about, and then say what you do and where you work. And then say, all right, let's get started. So keep it very brief. Other ways of gaining the audience's attention could be a quotation, a story, some kind of statistic. Those can really grab your audience's attention. Okay, I think it's important at some point, maybe not in your first 7 seconds, to share an outline or some kind of a roadmap. Where are we going? What are we talking about? Again, remember our role is to help our audience feel comfortable. So you are doing this for your audience so they know where you are going. Let's talk about the body of the presentation, the meat and potatoes of it. You want to keep your content simple. Simple and understandable information. If you are using pie charts and graphs, keep those simple as well. That doesn't mean that you don't go into depth with your information. You can go into depth. You still want to keep it simple. Stick to your notes. This is not the time to go off on a tangent. You practiced. You had things down. You don't want to introduce new information. You want to use some variety, and I call this FACSPA. Facts, analogies, quotes, stories, photos. FACSPA. Vary it up. As far as participation, you want to be careful. I've been in conference sessions where the presenters will say right at the beginning, this is going to be a lot of sharing, and then half the audience walks out. So if you plan on that, make sure you say it right away, or it should be in a conference description if you're doing this for a conference. For the most part, your audience is there to listen to you. So I would use participation sparingly. How do you do it online? You can. It's a little bit harder. You can ask your audience to read something. You can ask them to think about something. You can ask them to jot down some ideas. If you want to do it in the chat area or the question area, keep it very simple. A yes or no response, a scale of 1 to 10, or multiple choice, apple or orange, because they have to type in their response, and that takes time. It's not as quick as raising your hand in an actual room and calling on somebody. So again, if you use it in the chat area, keep it very simple where they don't have to share a lot of text. Finally, our conclusion. How do we wrap things up? I think it's a good idea to summarize what you talked about. You could even do a CTA, a call to action. Share an inspirational story or a quote. You can also circle back or reiterate what you covered in the introduction. Do you take questions first and then wrap up your presentation? Or do you wrap things up and take your questions at the end? It's really up to you. You always want to thank your audience. Thank them for being there, for spending time with you, and for listening to you. And at some point, if it's on a slide deck, have your contact information so people can be in touch with you. Okay, now that wraps up our content. Let's now talk about number 4, the number 4 key component, and that is visual content. Your visual content is very important in an online presentation because, again, people can't see you. In an in-person presentation, you can use props, you can use your facial expressions, you can use other tools, you can use audience participation a little bit more, you could do a role play or two. It's hard to do that online. So that is why your visual content is really, really important online. What are some general guidelines for our visual content? You want to use X amount of slides for X minutes. So the general rule is, let's say you have about 30 minutes of presenting. You want to use between 20 and 40 slides. A general guideline. The idea is you don't want to speak for 30 minutes and only use 10 slides because that means your audience is going to be staring at the same slide for a long time. So you don't want to use too many slides where they're playing catch up all the time, but you want to keep them moving a little bit. There's also the 6x6 rule, and that is no more than 6 bullet points and 6 words per bullet point. Again, this is a guideline. You will notice that I had some slides where I had more than 6 bullet points. That was on a few slides. It wasn't on every slide. Again, you don't have to read everything that is on your screen. Your audience can read that. You want to add to it. You want to keep things simple. You want to keep the visual content simple. I don't know that this is the best time to try a brand new tool if you are not as experienced in giving online presentations. So be comfortable with the tool you are using. You also want to keep your font at around 24 points for readability. And photos are always good. I would always suggest more photos than text, even decorative photos. Real photos are always best. Stock photos are very good as well. Why is it important to use more photos and less text? The slide on your left is one that I showed earlier, and when we were talking about delivery. By using less text on this slide, it gives me some flexibility, especially if I'm behind on time. Let's say I had used the slide on the right and I was running out of time. Because I have all this text on the screen now, I have to go through all of those talking points. And it doesn't give me as much flexibility in my presentation. So using less text gives you that flexibility. Here are some presentation tools. This is not an all-inclusive list. I have used several of these. I would say my favorite are PowerPoint and Google Slides. I have used eMaze from time to time. Canva, I have not used. I use it more for graphic design, and I've used Powtoon more for videos. So, what I'd like you to do now is go to the resource guide and click on a few of these tools. Pick maybe one or two that you're not familiar with, and just check them out online. See what they do. Do they have a cost? Spend a few minutes looking into these and see if they might be something you could use in the future. So go ahead now, pause your screen, go to the resource guide, and check out a few of these tools. Let's talk about colors a little bit. We want to keep the theme consistent. Typically, a darker font on a lighter background or a lighter font on a darker background is preferred. We want to avoid blue on red, red on purple, purple on green, vice versa. Those are very hard to read on a screen. Photos are great. Anytime you can use real photos, especially action shots, programs happening at the library, things that you already had permission to use, that is always preferred. Stock photos have come a long way, and there are a lot of great websites that offer free ones. Pixabay is one of them. You always want to give credit to your photos. PowerPoint has that built right in. If you don't put the little tagline by each photo, then maybe you have a slide at the end that has the slide number and the credit of where that photo is from. And of course, you want to be careful that photos are not offensive or could be taken as offensive. Keep your fonts clean. Sans serif and serif fonts are great because they are clean looking. The small strokes in some of the fonts are known as serifs, and you can see the difference between the two. So on your screen are some examples of really clean fonts to use in a presentation. You can mix a serif and a sans serif, especially for your headline and then your actual body text. You want to avoid handwriting fonts such as Lucinda handwriting. I would avoid any fonts that are all in caps. I've made that mistake before. I learned. And we want to keep them consistent. Stick to one or two. This is not the time to go all crazy. Again, remember, your audience is doing a lot. They're working hard. They're listening to you. They're processing a lot of information. Don't make it harder on them. Keep the visual component simple and easy for them. This seems like something pretty obvious, but again, you want to get someone to check your spelling, check your slide deck for organization, and make sure your photos are relevant. As I'm working on a slide deck, I will often duplicate a lot of slides because I like the way a certain slide looks. And then I have to remember, okay, I got to go back and change that photo. So make sure your photos are relevant on each slide. I don't think links are helpful on a screen in an online presentation because your audience can't click on it. I'd rather see a hyperlink, especially if you are sharing your slide deck, even as a PDF slide deck, or include a separate resource handout with the links on it. Speaking of handouts, a handout or a resource is nice. If you are sharing a lot of different links or books or information, you can determine when you want to share that. If you want to hand that out or share that right away or wait to the end, that is up to you. You've likely seen what is on your screen, and this has been nicknamed the slide-ament. I think these were more popular before. This is where you print out your PowerPoint slides and it's like 800 pages with lines for people to take notes. So again, I think this was popular before, but now I see many of us with small devices or laptops that we use at conferences or to take notes. So I don't think these are needed, and they are a waste of paper. What I would rather see or suggest is a 1 to 2 page resource list or handout that highlight your main points of your presentation. Animation is fine in an online presentation. You will notice that in this presentation, I've used it on some slides, but not all. If you're going to use it, keep it simple. Use the appear or the fade. I did my first PowerPoint presentation back in 1999, the late 90s. I was in college, and at the time I thought these animations were so cool. Here's one of them. I think that's called a swivel, and this is a drop or something like that. I would not use these. Again, these are hard on your viewer. They are not easy to follow, and it's going to take time to do this animation. So use simple animation. Should we use a script or no? These are my Wisconsin roots coming out, or no. I say no. A script, word for word, does not sound natural, and we can always tell when a presenter is reading. What I do suggest, and this was a suggestion to me years ago in a presentation about webinars, is to write out the first sentence of your slide and then use bullet points. When you write out that first sentence, you aren't stumbling or trying to think of something to say. You know what you're going to say right away. Then that part is smooth. And then you use your bullet points. And that is a great way for you to sound more natural in your presentation. At some point, either during a Q&A or at the end, you should share your contact information, and it's up to you as far as what that is. I would definitely share your email address. You could share your social media handles or hashtags. I don't know that a phone number or address is necessary anymore. I find that most people do an initial contact either on social media or via email. But I do think it's important to share that, especially if you run out of time for questions and people want to follow up with you. Here are a couple tips when it comes to the Q&A portion of an online presentation. If you have that, I think it's really good to repeat the question. I think it's good to do that in case it wasn't heard. And it also gives you time to think. You also want to stick to the question. In a Q&A, you want to answer as many questions as you can, and it's time sensitive. So try not to go off on tangents. You can offer to be contacted if you don't get to all the questions. If you get a question that you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know, and I will follow up with you on that. And you can ask your moderator to connect the two of you. The audience member might not want to be identified, especially if it's a sensitive question. So ask the moderator after the presentation to make that connection and follow up. If you get someone in a presentation that says, well, you mentioned this on your slide and I heard this instead, try not to get defensive. Instead, you can say, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to look into that. Or thank you for sharing that. That was something I hadn't found in my research or something I hadn't considered. So think of this person coming at it from a place of being helpful. It's very easy, again, because we're nervous, to get defensive when that happens. Try hard not to. You need to close off all of your apps on the computer in an online presentation so that there aren't pop-ups. Remember, if you're using a screen sharing application or platform, anything that pops up on your screen that you see, your audience is going to see. And you also want to silence any notifications on your phone. Okay. The fifth component is accessibility. This is something that I want us all to be mindful of. I'll also be sharing some additional resources on the resource sheet that I think will be helpful, but I want to highlight a few of them. A few tips here. I mentioned that we want to use a 24-point font. This is also key with the clean fonts that I talked about. The easy to read colors is also why we want to do that for accessibility reasons. You can do live captioning. Microsoft PowerPoint has that capability. And I think we're going to see this a lot more in online presentations going forward. If you have a recording, you should try to have it captioned. YouTube does this, and you can go in and edit that. And there are a lot of online organizations that do this at a fairly low cost. You want to make sure that your photos have alternate text. So at WVLS, we started captioning all of our webinar recordings in 2019, and that's been really helpful. So if you're using PowerPoint and you want to do online captioning, you can turn that on. If you go to your header to slideshow and click always use subtitles, it will automatically turn on your online captioning, which is really great. PowerPoint also has an accessibility checker. So all of your photos should have alternative text, and the checker will tell you how to correct that or how to fix it. It will also help you check the reading order for people who are reading your presentation on an e-reader. So photos should be described. You don't have to say this is an image of, you just have to describe it. So the PowerPoint can generate this for you. You can also mark it as decorative text. You'll see that on the photo on the right-hand side. You will notice that a lot of my slides today just had decorative text. They were there just to provide more information to add to the presentation. So a lot of my slides, a lot of my photos today I marked as decorative. So you can also use that as an option. So it's really great that PowerPoint has a lot of these tools already built in. Another tip that I learned from a colleague is to describe your image. So for this photo, I would say on the screen is an outdoor picture with a cactus. And this is helpful for people with visual impairments. And you would do this if the photo is significant to a story or what you are talking about. So you might be thinking, Jamie, this is a lot. Like, I have a presentation coming up in a month and there's no way I can incorporate all of this. So I want to tell you to not panic. The fact that you're watching this presentation on Online Presentation Tips says a lot. And I think it's going to alleviate a lot of your concerns already. Remember that I've presented and moderated online presentations for over 13 years. And all of this that I'm sharing with you today is from research, from trial and error, and making mistakes. So while I understand that a lot of this is really overwhelming, let's circle back to that first question at the beginning of the presentation. What 3 things concern you about giving an online presentation? So now ask yourself, do you feel better about those concerns? And what will you do to alleviate those concerns? How will you reach that goal of feeling better about online presentations? What I'd also like you to do is think about picking 3 things that you want to focus on for your next online presentation. Because I shared a lot with you in this presentation, I understand, again, this is overwhelming. So pick 3 things. Maybe it's your filler words. Maybe it's on incorporating more accessibility. Maybe it's going to be on your delivery and really varying up your speed and varying up your pitch. Maybe you want to try a new presentation tool. So pick 3 things. And then for the presentation after that, you're going to pick 3 more and you're going to take it from there. So go ahead now and pause the recording and jot down some ideas. Giving online presentations especially is a journey, and it takes practice. It also takes experience. We are all on a different path and journey. So be proud that you were asked to give an online presentation and of the work that you are going to do with it, and also have fun with it. If you make a mistake, and we all do, you'll learn from it. But if you give this online presentation your very best, if you prepare, if you practice, and if you do the very best you can, it will be awesome, and you will be awesome.
Thank you for joining me for today's recorded presentation. If you are a librarian in Wisconsin and wanting contact hours for certification, there's a pre-filled activity sheet in the description. If you completed the entire presentation, this activity is worth 1 contact hour in category B. In the description is also a link to a survey. Please take a few minutes and complete that. Your feedback is very important to us. There is also a link to a resource guide that I hope you find helpful. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation on online presentation tips. If you have further questions or comments, my email is on the screen, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you have a great day.